What's going on, everyone? Thanks for joining in. So today we have a special surprise because I've been waiting on this delivery for a while. I mean, I went ahead and signed up for the whole pre-order and all that stuff, and I've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. But it's finally here. It is finally here. Today, FedEx knocked on my door. I did the little signature. Actually, I didn't sign for it. Check it out. That's right. I finally got my C70 in. I am so excited to test this puppy out. I have not opened the box yet. It came in earlier today. And so yeah, let's do this. All right, so here we go. So again, we've got the C70 here. Now, this camera has been getting phenomenal reviews from so many different YouTubers and websites and so forth, primarily because of the form factor. It's a very small, compact cinema camera. Now, it provides a lot of competition because previously, you know, you've got, especially with Canon, you've got the C300s and the C500s and so forth, and they're amazing cameras, but they're just big and bulky and they're heavy and it's exhausting to walk around with. You look cool, but it gets tiring at the end of the day. Plus, each of the C models are always like, you have to get the next one to get one thing that the previous one was missing, and they're all just so mix and match, and they had so many issues where some offered great specs, others were missing this spec, and you really had to have like almost every single C line in order to get kind of the perfect cinema camera. Well, the C70 is supposed to kind of combine all that nicely. Now, it's still super 35 millimeter, so sorry, you know, it's not full frame. Canon is coming out with their full frame adapter, which basically acts like a Metabone speed booster, so it gives you an extra stop of light and makes the image wider, just like with a full frame camera. So you're supposed to be able to use any of your, well, majority of your Canon full frame lenses with the C70. So it's essentially making the C70 a full frame cinema camera. So that right there is pretty phenomenal. Now, Red has their Komodo, which I really like Red. They've been way out of my price range for a long time, but the Komodo was very, very appealing. And it was hard to choose between the C70 or the Komodo, especially since they're right there at each other's price point. I went with the C70 mainly because of the 4K 120. This shoots 4K at 120 frames per second. Now, I haven't tested it out yet. I literally have not opened the box yet. Now, the Komodo will shoot a high frame rate. One of the big drawbacks is that it crops in the image. The C70 doesn't. Now, the Red Komodo also maxes out at 4K at 60 frames per second, whereas the C70 is 4K at 120 frames per second. The 4K at 120 is not cropped. That is awesome, all right? Now, the 2K at 180 frames per second, that is cropped. So it goes from a Super 35 to a Super 16. So there's quite a bit of crop in there, but it's still not as bad as the Red Komodo. When you bump the Red Komodo to higher frame rate, you are dropping it down to closer to like a micro 4/3 sensor size. So there's a huge crop difference between those two. The Red Komodo, of course, has the red form factor, the red color science, also the fact that it has a global shutter, which pretty much eliminates all rolling shutter at all. So that's a great camera, but this looking around, reading around, all the different specs between the two, the C70 fit me better because of the higher frame rate, the less of an issue with crop factor. I can still use all my Canon lenses, even though the Red Komodo still has, or is now RF mount, which is fantastic. With Canon releasing their EF to RF 0.71 time lens adapter, that's a huge selling point to stick with Canon. Canon with the C70, I can also still use the previous batteries I was using with my C300 Mark II. That's awesome. Plus SD cards. That's pretty great. Now the C70 records in XF AVC as well as MP4, so it's easier data management in that fact. Now the C70 does not record RAW. All right, so if you're one of these guys that everything has to be shot in RAW, you need to shoot in RAW, C70 is not for you because it doesn't shoot RAW. Now maybe they'll, you know, more than likely Canon will probably come out with some, you know, send it back for $1,000 and we'll install RAW thing, but right now C70 does not shoot RAW. You still get 16 steps of dynamic range, so that is fantastic, and the reviews have been really good. Now, again, I'm not gonna get in too much technical detail here because there's enough videos of that. If you really wanna get into the full-on tech aspects, check out Gerald Undone. He does fantastic, really in-depth tech reviews. I know the guy, just kidding, I don't know, I've never met him. He seems like a cool guy, but check out Gerald Undone, and he can really give you a more in-depth technical review about these cameras as well as various other ones as well. What I'm more focused on is this really the camera for me? Now, again, the main thing that attracted me to the C70 is the fact that I can do 4K at 120 frames per second. That's awesome, all right? It's got dual SD card slots, so you can get your primaries as well as backup recording or proxy recording, simultaneous recording, or, you know, sequential when one card fills up and moves to the next card type situation. As well as it's still got the touchscreen of the C200 feature, but the sensor of the C300 Mark III. So this is literally like they've taken a lot of different parts from a lot of different C body cameras and meshed them into one, into a really small, compact form factor. Now, I love having freedom whenever I'm shooting. I love being able to just pick up my gimbal and run around and not have to worry about getting exhausted because of the weight of the gimbal or weight of the camera. I love ease of use. That was the main reasons that I was focused more on C70. Now, the thing I am curious about is the rolling shutter. Some of the other C bodies had pretty bad rolling shutter. The C100 was, no, just don't even move the camera around, it's bad. C300 Mark II, I've been really impressed with the rolling shutter actually. I hardly even noticed it. Some of the other models, they do have that. So that's one thing I'm really curious to test out with the C70. How is the rolling shutter? As well, how is the 4K at 120? And by the fact that we're now shooting to SD cards, how slow of an SD card write can I get away with? You know, can I use my regular SanDisk cards I've been using with everything else? Or do I need to step up to the recommended, you know, ones that are out there that are expensive? Because I already bought a bunch of CFast cards, my C300 Mark II. That's the irritating part. But, and the other thing too is, can this replace my C300 Mark II? Now, I love the C300 Mark II, but one of the things that this camera is missing is SDI output. It does have full-size HDMI, but it does not have SDI. Now, if you're used to more production type shooting, that can be a problem. So you would probably have to, you know, run your HDMI through to a external monitor that has SDI like the Atomus Ninja 5 and so forth, and then run SDIs out that to a monitor, or just jump onto HDMI and run it through there. Great. All right, enough of this. Let's open this puppy up and yeah, let's get this done. All right, so we got our cardboard here. We've got the nice little manual, which I never read. Well, the warranty card, that is kind of important. That's important. Let's see here. Let's open this puppy up. All right. We've got a nice little charger. All right, so it does take a DC plug on the side, so this isn't something you just throw into the wall outlet. All right. We've got the top handle. It's actually pretty nice. It's got a real nice grip to it. Actually, that feels really good. That's pretty sweet. Oh yeah. Now this was something that the C300 Mark II really irritated me with, by the fact that it wasn't just a quick, easy top handle release. So this has a nice little thumb screw that you just pop in and screw it down and you are good to go. That's awesome. I'm glad that Canon finally did something to change this design, because the screws and all that crap you had to do with the previous models was just annoying. All right, so we've got a AC plug here. We got the strap, which no one ever uses. All right, we have a bunch of screws here. now for the good stuff. Oh yeah. Let's go through the rest of this. So we've got the regular AC charger here. All right, so we've got that, which plugs into here. Wow, this is a lot. All right, so you plug that into there, and then you can plug that into your battery pack. But I'm sure this also plugs in the back of the camera. It's got to, right? All right. Now I love the C300 Mark II, but one of the irritating factors is the fact that it maxes out at 30 frames per second in 4K, which in this current time period, you need high frame rate 4K. You just do, because especially with different clients and you want to get something creative and slow footage down, and like if you're shooting a car, you want to be able to slow it down too. So there's that factor there. Now the C300 Mark II has been a great camera. It helped a lot with a lot of different projects, but it's kind of become dated for me now. So this was a huge reason to step up to the C70, which sounds odd that the C70 is actually a step up from the C300 Mark II. But again, this is the same sensor as the C300 Mark III. All right, so we've got shotgun mic holder. Oh, okay. So that's what these screws are for. Kind of cool. It's got its own little absorption here. You see that there. So your shotgun mic here, or your boom mic, whatever, and it's got its own little shock absorber. Now that's pretty sweet, as well as a spot to put in your wire. All right, we've got our, let's see, this should be the A60, A30, there we go. And they sent it to us not charged. Awesome, but it's all right, I've got two more. So let's actually throw this puppy on the charger. All right, let's do this. The box is empty now. Okay. Woo! I'm excited. Ho, 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 ho. Now that. Wow. This is really sweet. All right, so we've got exhaust vent here. All right, so yeah, if you want to run time code, so you do have your SDI time code plug there. Let's see, you've got the dual SD card slots in the front there. So it's actually built into the grip, which is nice because, you know, as you're shooting, you don't have to worry about it flying open and your card's jumping out or whatever. This does not lock in place though. So definitely different. But since your hand is going to be in here the whole time, you don't really need the lock, do you? Do you? I don't think so. All right, let's loosen this up a little bit. So one of the cool things about the C70 is that it is one of the first, or might be the first, cinema cameras that have a tripod slot, hole, whatever you want to call it, on the top or side, allowing it to be mounted and to shoot vertical. So this is actually one of the first cameras that allows you to shoot vertical. So I guess Canon kind of knows the direction with Instagram and so forth, especially Instagram TV and social media and all that. So you can actually use this camera to shoot quality vertical content that you don't have to mess with or change around the sizing and rotational and all that crap in post. So that is actually pretty sweet. All right, so we got our battery slot here. Now there is no cover for the battery slot, FYI. We've got the screen here, which is almost full, so it will, there you go. All right, so you can flip it down, flip it back, and flip it to the front if you want to vlog. All right, then we have our audio adjustments here. So our lines, our mic, phantom power. Now with this camera, it is not full-size XLR. It is the mini XLR, which should be, yep, there you go. So you've got two inputs, and they're the mini XLRs there. So you will have to get an adapter for a mini XLR if you plan on running audio from this or running audio to it. All right, we have our mic input, headphone jack, USB, which yes, is USB-C. You have your remote. Plug, there's a little of that, there you go. So your little extension remote, and then your full size HDMI output, which I am really liking this. Okay, the overall weight is really, really good. Now, it's not a Fuji X-T3. Again, that is still one of my favorite cameras, but this looks awesome. Now, I think this will be really nice mounted on, you know, a gimbal. And that was like one of the main focuses, was making a compact camera, high-end compact camera that you can throw onto a gimbal easy enough and still get all the usage out of pretty much any other cinema body. All right, so we've got a bunch of different plugs on the sides here, all numbered, which, you know, that means you can also reprogram all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we have 10 programmable buttons. You have your slot select there for shooting. If you want to switch to your memory card slot, that's pretty sweet. I mean, they really did a really good job designing this. The grip feels really, really good. It feels super sturdy. Now, the camera does a weird in-body stabilization thing. Wow, look at that RF mount. Dude, that is so flush. And I'm so used to seeing, let's see if we can get a little bit closer here. So you can see, there we go. That is right there. Man, that RF mount has almost no flange to it like the previous Canon mod bodies because, you know, it's mirrorless. So there's no mirror flipping up and down. So again, the C70 is a Super 35 sensor, 4K up to 120 frames per second. It does do DCI. I'm not sure if it's DCI at 120 frames per second, but it is 4K DCI. So that is really sweet. Man, this is nice. Now, the sucky thing, the thing that irritates me so much is there were no EF to RF adapters available by the time that I got notice this was coming in. So I can't fully test it yet, but initial review, I love this thing. I love the feel of this. The look of it, the feel of it. We've got the nice logoing, the text all the way around. You've got your hot shoe mount there as well. Yep, so there we go. Screw that in. We are good for there. It does have a spot to plug 2 screws right there. So see, you can pretty much mount it to anything, but it does kind of have that dedicated spot right there, which allows you to screw that in. And the screws I threw on the ground, no, they're right here. And then the small screws are right there. So if you want to basically just kind of keep this, you know, kind of locked into place so that you can have it ready to go anytime you need to throw a handle on and throw your shotgun mic on. What we can do in the meantime is check out the display. So I'm gonna pop in my other A30 battery and check this out. I love the placement of this, the media, the slot, the adjustment there, record. I love camera on, boom. And it is fast. It boots up fast. All right, so I believe this is, yeah, so it's not fully touchscreen. I believe it's only touchscreen as far as when you are trying to focus. So we've got our little joystick right there. So I'm gonna adjust the time zone. The joystick is a little finicky right now. All right. So it does have somewhat normal touchscreen capability. We do have the function there. We're gonna adjust our white balance. We're gonna adjust our all right, so you have 6 stops, but then you also have these additional expanded 8 to 10 stop ND filter change. You have your, oh nice, shutter angle, which is kind of comes as a preset there. Now, okay, one thing I will say I'm disliking a little bit is the fact, because your hand is here, your thumb is typically gonna be more up here. So you wouldn't really be using the joystick here. It's kind of uncomfortable. So you literally have to kind of pull your hand back. That's not very cool. Is it a huge con? No, it's just it's a little design thing I don't really care for. Seems like they probably should have put it, honestly, like here, maybe on the side, or even like right here, actually. Well, I don't know if that'd work with the, but somewhere else. But for right now, you do have to pull your hand back in order to use the little joystick there. All right, so yeah, so it is limited touchscreen. It's not that you can just run through the menu touching the screen here. You do have to use the joystick. The touchscreen only comes in play on the actual camera screen, not through the menu is set up, just so you know. All right, so we've got, all right, so there's our crop mode. So you can actually switch your crop, your sensor mode in camera. You've got your 24, 50 to 59 Hertz. In the States, we typically always use 59. All right. We got 10-bit, 422, XF AVC, 10-bit MP4, 422, 420, and 8-bit 420. So HEVC and as well H.264. Let's do that. There we go. That's nice too, because you don't actually have to leave the screen on while you're shooting, or a screen open while you're shooting. You flip it around, throw it to the back, you're good to go. So under record format, you have your XAVC Y22 10-bit. Now XAVC Y22 10-bit offers you a larger uncompressed bitrate at 410 megabits per second. However, when you use XF AVC Y22 or 422, you are limited to only 29.97 frame rate. Now, and that's, again, this is at DCI. Now, if you drop this to the MP4 HEVC Y22 or YCC 422 10-bit, it does drop the bit rate, but it does give you the option for DCI, 3840, regular 4K, 2K, and 1920 by 1080, and it allows you to go to 60 frames per second. So you can still shoot a little bit higher bit rate because, because XF AVC, in order to get 60 frames per second, you have to drop it to long GOP, which drops that bit rate to 160 megabits per second. So in order to get a better bit rate, still higher frame rate, you want to go to MP4 HEVC 422. When you bump that to 60 frames per second, you can see it brings the bit rate to 225 megabits per second. So yes, it's still a lower bit rate than as the XF AVC, but it still allows you to shoot full 4K, DCI, 60 frames per second, or 120 under the slow and fast motion mode. Now, one thing to keep in mind, so although the frame rate here shows max of 59.94, to get to the 120, you've got to slide over to the recording mode and switch to slow and fast motion or slow and fast motion clip. From there, you can bump it to 90 to 120. And that gives you that up to 120 frames per second frame rate. FYI, just in case you didn't know. Now, the slow and fast motion, just look that up on a separate YouTube video, and you can get a nice explanation of how that works. All right, so we've got second media card, record functions, metadata, MP4 clip and photo numbering. So far I will say the joystick's a little finicky. It's like not as responsive as I was hoping it'd be. We've got our C-Log2, C-Log3, PQ, which is Beat and BT 2020, and then HLG, which is kind of like a HDR type mode, and then your user profiles. And you've got up to 20 customized profiles. Digital image stabilization. You've got your focus modes, light metering, shockless white balance, shutter mode. You can switch from speed, angle, clear scan, or off. I'm coming from the DSLR world, so I am used to speed. Sorry if that offends anyone in the production world, but that's what I'm used to. Shutter increments, ISO gains, extended ND range. Whoops, there we go. Extended ND range. There and on. I am really liking how this feels right now. This really feels cool, like this. I love the look, I love the feel. Not crazy about the joystick right now, but maybe it'll kind of loosen up the more I use it. But I am super anxious now to go and test this thing and see what it can actually do, as well as see how is the rolling shutter on this camera. How does it do? You know, is it as good as the C300 Mark II, or is it like the C100? You've got a lot of great functionality here. You've got so much crammed into this tiny body. This is pretty awesome. I am really liking the look, the feel, the design. This is a very aesthetically pleasing camera. Now, one thing I want to bring out is the weight difference between the C70 and just your typical like 5D Mark IV. So the 5D Mark IV with battery is rated about 32 ounces, all right? The C70 doesn't say with battery, but I'm gonna say with battery, is rated about 42 ounces. So there's literally about a 10-ounce difference between the two of these. Now, is that huge? It's really not. Honestly, there's not a lot of weight difference between these two bodies. The 5D Mark IV, of course, is gonna be lighter, because it is, but this still, it's not that big of a difference there. So I'm gonna say that this will still feel pretty good on a gimbal. It shouldn't wear at your arm too much. Now again, this is still 10-bit, it's still 422, which is great. So you're still gonna really get really high quality. Something else I wanna mention too, I was thinking back to regarding the, no internal RAW video. Now the C70 features DGI, which is dual gain output. What that means is basically recording at two different gain levels for your video. So it's shooting at higher and lower, and then it's mixing the two into a final file. That's also why it doesn't shoot RAW, because that's kind of what RAW already does. It's uncompressed, it's unaltered, it's unedited, and it gives you more flexibility in editing. But the DGO file output does that as well. Now, I'm curious to see how well it'll allow like pullback of highlights and shadow increasing and things like that. But that's a unique aspect with this camera. You don't actually need RAW with it because the camera records in DGO, which is phenomenal. So that just offers a new, cool, unique way to use this camera and to get around the RAW aspect of, especially file size. Anyone shooting RAW, the challenge of storing all that data there. So this is actually pretty sweet. Now, let's see, I have a SanDisk Extreme Pro, which is rated at 170 megabits per second. So let's see how well this does. Yeah, we got our slot here. We got A and B. We're gonna throw this into A. As well, the digital IS does work to a degree in camera. And then when you add the RF lens that is stabilized, that just adds a whole nother aspect of stabilization there. All right, so it is recording. It's showing that I got 75 minutes of footage that I can record. Buffer overflow, so recording stops. So you definitely need a faster memory card. SanDisk 170 megabit Extreme Pro, not gonna cut it for 4K 60 frames per second on this camera. It shut off after like 15-30 seconds. So FYI, you do have to buy a higher performance writing SD cards, which is great. I just, gotta invest in more media, but oh well, that's what comes with the territory whenever you buy a new camera. All right, so there you have it. The unboxing of the Canon C70. I have to say I'm really impressed with the overall look, feel, aesthetics of this camera right now. I'm I'm really looking forward to being able to test it out. Now, tomorrow I am supposedly getting an adapter that'll convert my EF to RF mount lenses. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my hands on an RF mount lens this week. So tomorrow, an EF to RF adapter is supposed to be getting here. Then I'll actually be able to test this puppy out. It's not the Canon adapter. It is an aftermarket EF to RF mount adapter, but it at least gives me an idea of how this performs as far as image quality, rolling shutter, all that. Can I rely on the autofocus from that adapter? Probably not. But that's not really what I'm totally concerned with, because this is Canon. It's got the dual pixel autofocus anyway, so I already know it's going to be amazing. But which was another reason I picked the C70 over the Red Komodo. I need autofocus. I can't have someone pulling my focus constantly for every single shoot. I need a reliable autofocus, and that is another reason I chose the Canon C70 so far. Now, again, the ultimate test is actually going to be, the overall quality, usage, and rolling shutter. How is it? So that'll be the next video. Please be sure to check it out. Please subscribe, make any comments you like about this particular camera if you've used it yet, if you use the Red Komodo, if you think I'm a fool for picking Canon over Red, or if you think I'm a genius for picking Canon over Red, you can comment too. That's cool. I accept it. Anyway, until next time, we'll catch y'all later, and please be safe.